Okay, medical debt. It's like one of those things, right?
Yeah.
It can really keep you up at night.
Oh, tell me about it.
You go in for like what you think is a routine checkup, and suddenly, bam, you're hit with this bill
Yep.
that your insurance decided not to cover.
Happens all the time, unfortunately.
And it feels like it's already dinged your credit score before you even open the envelope.
You're definitely not alone in feeling that way, that's for sure.
It can be a very frustrating system.
It is.
And so many people are surprised, right?
Yeah.
They're like, wait, I'm facing collections for this? I didn't even know this bill existed.
Right.
So that's what we're diving into today on this deep dive.
We're going to tackle it head on.
That often confusing journey of a medical bill on its way to collections.
The twists and turns.
Yes, but more importantly, how you can fight back.
Absolutely.
Protect yourself, protect your credit.
Yeah, understanding how it all works is really that first step towards taking control,
Right, so walk us through it. What actually happens to a medical bill that ends up kind of going rogue and ending up in collections?
Well, it usually starts pretty simply. You get medical care, right?
Yeah.
Your provider bills your insurance company. Then any leftover balance, that gets sent to you as a statement. So far, so good. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But where do things start to go off the rails? I've heard some real horror stories about billing errors or like bills getting lost in the mail.
Oh, yeah. These are definitely common issues.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, a simple human error, honestly.
Right.
Maybe the amount is wrong or there's just confusion about what your insurance should be covering. And other times it's a change of address.
Yeah.
The bill just never makes it to you.
But what really gets me is the lack of communication.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like there's this big breakdown, right, between the provider, the insurance company, and the patient.
Absolutely. Sometimes the provider might not be super clear about how billing works, or the insurance company isn't great about communicating what's going on with the claim. But, here's where it gets really frustrating.
Okay.
Sometimes you don't even see a bill before it goes to collections.
Wait, hold on. How is that even possible? You mean you can get blindsided by a collection agency before you even have the chance to, talk to your provider about the bill?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You're focused on recovering from an illness or an injury, and suddenly you're getting hounded by a collection agency about this bill you've never even seen.
Wow. Talk about adding insult to injury, right?
I know. It's tough.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly stressful. I can see why so many people just feel powerless in these situations.
For sure. And it can really feel like the whole system is rigged against you.
Right.
Especially when so many people are already struggling financially because of these medical expenses.
Okay, so let's talk about some good news for a change.
Okay.
I understand that there have been some changes, right, to the rules surrounding medical debt on credit reports. Is that right?
Yeah, there have been definitely some positive developments.
Okay, good.
The credit bureaus have put a few changes in place that are really working in favor of consumers.
Good. Tell me more.
All right, so first of all, medical debts under $500, they're not reported on credit reports anymore.
Oh, okay, so that's a big win.
Huge win.
Yeah, for anyone dealing with those smaller kind of unexpected medical bills.
Especially if you've just let a small bill slip through the cracks.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But what about if you have a debt over $500? Are there any changes that could help in that situation?
Absolutely. One of the most significant changes is that once you pay off a medical collection, it's completely removed from your credit report.
Oh, wow. So even if you had some trouble in the past, once it's paid off, it's like it doesn't follow you around anymore.
Gone, a clean slate.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Does this apply to debts of any amount?
Any amount, yeah.
Okay, great. Are there any other recent changes that people should be aware of?
Yeah, there's now a 1-year waiting period before any medical debt can be reported to the credit bureaus.
Oh, wow. That gives you so much more time to sort things out.
It really does.
Address any billing issues with your provider or your insurance.
Exactly.
Before it even touches your credit score.
A much-needed buffer,
Okay.
a chance to maybe negotiate a payment plan.
Right.
Or work with the insurance company or dispute any errors before anything, before your credit's affected.
This must make a huge difference for folks who are really just trying to navigate all the complexities of the medical billing system.
Oh, it's a game changer for sure.
Okay, so this all sounds like a step in the right direction.
It is.
But I'm sure a lot of our listeners are wondering, okay, but what if I'm already dealing with this? What if it's already on my credit report? Where do I even start?
You start with your credit report. Think of it like a financial health checkup. You got to know what's in there.
Okay.
And you can get a free copy of your report from annualcreditreport.com.
I've heard of that site, but I'll admit I haven't checked mine in a while.
It's easy to forget about, but you really should be reviewing it regularly. And once you have it, you really got to look closely at any medical collections that might be listed. Pay attention to everything, the dates, the amounts, and the name of the collector.
So you're saying we should be like detectives with our own credit report?
Kind of, yeah.
Like looking for any inconsistencies, any red flags? What should we be looking for specifically?
Okay, so first, always double check the amount that they say you owe.
Right.
Make sure it's accurate. Billing errors, they're way more common than you think.
Yeah.
And you don't want to end up paying more than you actually owe.
Yeah.
And then pay attention to the date the debt happened. If it's old, it might be past the statute of limitations in your state.
Okay.
Meaning you might not even have to pay it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not always a lost cause, even if you do have medical collections on your report.
Not at all.
What if you find an error? What should you do then?
If you spot anything that just doesn't seem right, you need to dispute it
Okay.
directly with the credit bureaus.
Okay. So we're talking Experian, Equifax, TransUnion.
The big three.
The big three, yeah. And they each have their own process, right, for filing a dispute.
They do, but you can usually do it online, which is the easiest and fastest way.
I've always been a little intimidated by those credit bureaus, to be honest.
I get it.
But it sounds like you're really encouraging listeners to be their own advocates.
You have to be.
Yeah.
Hold the credit bureaus accountable.
Right. So it's really important to gather any documentation, like any bills or statements,
Anything.
any communication with your provider that supports your claim, right?
Yes. The more evidence, the stronger your case. And remember, if they can't verify the debt after they investigate it, they have to remove it. It's the law.
Okay. So it's all about knowing your rights
Yes.
and pushing back when you need to.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about contacting the collection agency, like directly? Is that something we should be doing as well?
It's a key step. In addition to the credit bureaus, you want to reach out to the collection agency and ask for a detailed breakdown of what you owe.
Okay. What should you be asking them specifically?
Ask for documentation that shows the debt is actually yours, that the amount is correct. They are legally obligated to give you this information, but you have to ask for it in writing.
So if they can't back up their claims with the right documents, they have to back off.
They do.
Okay, what about situations where, your insurance should have covered the bill, but for some reason they didn't?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. If you think your insurance should have paid, you got to gather all the evidence you can to prove it. Contact your insurance company, ask for anything that shows they were supposed to cover it, like explanation of benefits statements, copies of your policy, anything.
It's all about the paper trail.
Exactly.
So once you have all that evidence, where do you send it?
Send it to the collection agency and to the credit bureaus. You're basically saying, hey, this isn't my problem, my insurance messed up.
Right.
And that's often enough to get it resolved.
It sounds like knowledge is power
It really is.
when it comes to dealing with medical debt.
You have more control than you think.
We've been talking about disputing errors on your credit report and contacting collection agencies. But what if you've done all that
Right.
and the debt is actually valid? What are your options then for getting it removed?
That's a great question. Because even if it's, legitimate, it can still really hurt your credit score.
Yeah, it can make it so hard to do anything. Get a loan, rent an apartment, even get a job,
Yeah.
So let's talk strategy. What can people actually do to try to get these medical collections removed from their credit reports?
So one tactic that can be pretty successful is called pay for delete. Have you heard of this?
I have, but I'm not totally sure how it works. Can you, explain it?
Sure. Basically, you're negotiating with the collection agency
Okay.
to remove the debt from your credit report in exchange for paying it.
Oh, okay. So it's like you're saying, I'll pay you what I owe, but you have to wipe the slate clean.
Exactly.
So it's like a bargaining chip almost.
Yeah.
You're offering to settle the debt in full, but in exchange for a clean credit history. Does it usually work?
It's not a guarantee, but it can be really effective, especially with older debts.
Oh, okay.
Collection agencies, they're often more willing to negotiate on those older debts because they know they're harder to collect on.
Makes sense. Like something is better than nothing, right?
Exactly. It could be a win-win. But here's the thing. You always have to get the agreement in writing
Right.
before you pay anything.
Okay.
Do not rely on a promise over the phone.
Right.
You need that documentation as proof.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Always get it in writing. I imagine a signed agreement would be pretty important if you ever had to, prove that the debt was actually removed.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of documentation and legal matters, there's another important thing to keep in mind, the statute of limitations.
Oh, yeah, that always sounds kind of intimidating. What does that even mean when it comes to medical debt?
So every state has a statute of limitations on debt collection,
Right.
which basically sets a time limit for how long a creditor can sue you for not paying a debt.
Okay.
So imagine you get this call about a medical bill from like 5 years ago,
Right.
and you're freaking out. But then you find out in your state, they can't even sue you for it anymore
Oh,
because it's past that deadline.
so that's like a potential lifesaver.
It could be.
So there's a chance you might not have to pay a medical debt if it's old enough.
There is, but the thing is, that time limit, it varies from state to state.
Oh, right, right.
And depending on the type of debt.
Okay.
So you really got to check your state's laws.
This could be super valuable information for people struggling with medical debt.
It really could. But here's the catch.
Okay.
Acknowledging the debt in any way can actually restart the clock on that statute of limitations.
Good. Wow.
So even a phone call to the collection agency could reset that time limit.
Got it.
And suddenly, you're on the hook again for a debt that you thought you were in the clear on.
So it's like a legal tightrope walk almost. You can't ignore it and hope it goes away.
Right.
But you have to be careful not to like accidentally bring it back to life.
Yeah. You don't want to accidentally revive something you might not even legally have to pay. So if you think a debt might be past the statute of limitations, honestly, talk to a lawyer,
Okay.
someone who specializes in debt collection.
Right.
They can help you figure out all the details and make sure you're protected.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier about getting everything in writing.
Oh, yeah, so important.
That documentation is just crucial.
It is in any negotiation with a debt collector. It protects you and it makes sure that everyone is on the same page.
Can you give us some specific examples of what we should be asking for? What should these documents look like?
Okay, so let's say you're doing a pay-for-delete agreement.
Right.
You need something from the collection agency in writing that says they will remove the debt from your credit report once you pay.
Got it.
This agreement, it needs to be detailed.
Right.
It needs to include the exact amount you're paying, the date of payment, and a very clear statement that the debt will be removed from all 3 credit bureaus.
So it's not just a matter of sending a check and hoping for the best.
No.
You need to be proactive.
Proactive, yeah.
Make sure you have that signed agreement.
It protects both of you.
Yeah.
And it prevents any confusion later on. And it's not just for pay for delete. Anytime you're disputing a debt, document everything.
Right.
Keep records of every phone call, email, letter, payer.
And what kind of information should we be noting down during those interactions?
Yeah. The date and time of each call, the name of the person you talked to, a summary of what you discussed. And if you're sending any documents, like proof that you paid or evidence of insurance coverage, always make copies.
So again, it's about that paper trail, right?
Yes.
The more evidence you have, the better.
Having all that documentation, it can really make all the difference in getting a debt dispute resolved.
Right.
It shows you're organized, you're informed, and you're serious about fixing this.
This has been so eye-opening.
Good.
I'm really starting to realize how important it is to be your own advocate.
You really do have more power than you might think.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I'm sure there's always more to learn.
Always. The world of medical debt and credit reporting, it's always changing, so you got to stay informed.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. We'll wrap things up with some final thoughts and a question for you all to think about after we take a quick break. Stick with us.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of medical debt and credit reports. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a lot more informed and maybe a little less intimidated by it all now.
Good. That's what we're aiming for. Knowledge really is power when you're dealing with this stuff. The more you understand, the better you can handle it.
Totally. We have covered a lot of ground today, from the beginning, how that medical bill ends up in collections, to disputing those errors, negotiating with those agencies, even the statute of limitations. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure our listeners, they walk away with the most important points, the key takeaways.
Yeah, let's recap, make sure everyone's got it. Okay, so first things first, you have rights. Remember that. Don't let debt collectors push you around or make you feel like you have no options. You have the right to dispute errors on your credit report. You have the right to ask for proof of any debt they're trying to collect from you.
Those are your rights, and you should absolutely use them. Don't be afraid to push back a little, ask questions, demand that proof. It's on them to show you that the debt is real and that the amount is accurate.
And on that note, being proactive.
Right.
It's so important to check your credit report often. Look for anything suspicious, especially those medical collections. Don't wait until you're trying to get a loan or rent a place to find out there's a problem.
I cannot emphasize that enough. Catching it early is key. The sooner you spot something, the easier it is to fix. It's like preventative maintenance for your finances.
Okay, so let's say we've checked our reports, disputed any errors, we're ready to face those collection agencies. What's next?
Well, if you've made sure that debt is actually valid, then you can start looking at your options for getting it removed. Remember we talked about pay for delete?
Yeah. That can be a good strategy, especially for older debts.
Right. Negotiating with the agency to remove it from your credit report in exchange for paying what you owe. It's like making a deal to move on with a clean slate.
Exactly. And don't forget, if that debt is past the statute of limitations in your state, you might not even have to pay it at all. But as we talked about before, be careful with that. Maybe get some legal advice if you're not sure. You don't want to accidentally make yourself responsible for a debt you don't have to pay.
Right. It sounds like there are different approaches, and the best way to handle it depends on your situation. But the main thing is you have options. You don't have to go through this alone.
That's a really good point. There are resources out there to help you figure this stuff out. Credit counseling agencies, legal aid organizations, even online communities where you can talk to people who've been through the same thing. It's all about finding the support you need, the information you need to make the right decisions and take control of your finances. So you've checked your credit report, disputed errors, contacted those collection agencies, explored those negotiation tactics. What's the last thought you want to leave our listeners with today?
This whole conversation, it makes me think about how we can actually improve the system as a whole, because right now it's so complicated and confusing, it leaves a lot of people open to unfair practices. Wouldn't it be great if it were more straightforward, more patient-friendly?
Yeah, you shouldn't need a law degree to understand your medical bills and figure out how to pay them.
Exactly. Imagine if medical billing was actually clear and simple, where people really understood their rights and their choices, and where the communication between providers, insurance companies, and patients was actually smooth and efficient.
Sounds like a dream world.
Maybe, but it's something to strive for, right?
It is. It is. More transparency, better communication, more empathy for people who are honestly dealing with enough already with their health. That's what we need.
Absolutely. Medical debt shouldn't be another burden on top of everything else.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with one last thing to think about. What changes would you like to see in the healthcare system to protect patients from these unfair practices? It's a complex problem, no easy solutions, but it's a conversation we need to have. We encourage you to keep learning about this, to advocate for change, and to share your experiences, share your ideas. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and take care of yourselves.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.